Hello, everyone, or no one for that matter. This video is just a drawing that I did in a mini sketchbook. I got the sketchbook from Walmart. It was probably $1, maybe $2. I'm using my TWSBI Go demonstrator pen with diamine or diamine ink, not sure exactly how to say it, in the scribble purple color. I really like the scribble purple color. It's really dark, almost black, I would say. At times it's more purple, at times it's more black, but I like it for that factor. The paper in the sketchbook is a little temperamental, I guess. It tends to bleed a little, which is okay. That's fine. I don't really mind a little bleeding. But it also has a feathering quality to it, which you probably can't see in the footage, but it's more than just a feathering. It's not predictable at all. Sometimes there's no feathering on a certain part of the paper. A different part of the paper, there are like large streaks, which kind of lend me to be more careless in my lines if I know that they can be feathered out, and kind of the crispness of the lines can't really be relied upon. But it also has a very weird smudging issue. Even after the ink is completely dry, I worked on this drawing in a couple different sessions, and each time, before I even close the sketchbook, I make sure that I've let the ink dry completely, blow on the ink to make it dry quicker, and it doesn't smudge with the paper necessarily, like closing the sketchbook, but I guess just the oils from my fingers create a smudging issue. I didn't really think it would be that big of an issue if the ink was completely dry. And then using a different sketchbook I think it might be the ink, because in that sketchbook as well, it also smudges. But then I think about maybe the ink doesn't seep into this paper. It doesn't fully sink in. It doesn't bleed onto the next page, and it barely even bleeds to where you can see it if you look at the page from the backside. And this paper is not very thick. It's pretty cheap paper, I'm sure. I mean, the sketchbook costs $1. But I have a more expensive sketchbook with thicker paper designed for, paint or watercolor. And on that sketchbook, the ink tends to pool a little bit. It does not seep into the paper really at all. So I can understand a smudging problem with that more than this paper. But at the end of the day, this is a tiny sketchbook, something that for me is less intimidating to take on, similar to like a sticky note in the way that you can tackle it, create a smaller drawing, maybe with more detail or less detail, but it feels like less of an undertaking. It feels like something you can start and finish in a day or two on top of whatever else you have going on. If you're not a full-time artist where you have all day to draw, small sketchbooks like this and sticky notes for me are a way to quickly kind of scratch that itch of just drawing something in a less intimidating fashion. It doesn't feel like you're taking on a large project that you kind of feel obligated to finish in a certain amount of time. In general, even with larger projects that I do, larger drawings, I tend to not keep myself on a strict time or put any added pressure on myself to finish it. I try to just let it happen, let the drawing happen. If one day I feel like working on a drawing for 10 minutes and that's it, then that's fine. You have to let that amount of time and effort be enough. Or if there's another day where I want to draw for 2 straight hours, that also is okay, given that every other responsibility is taken care of. But for me, allowing myself the freedom to start and stop when I want, I think lets my mind almost reset. If you draw for an hour, I feel like I've at certain times, I draw for a certain amount of time, usually longer periods, and it feels like I've kind of run out of ideas. There's only so many different lines, so many different variations and shapes that I can put together in one sitting. So I take a break and I come back to it, whether it's later that day or the next day. And with a fresh mind, it feels like you have not necessarily more ideas, but you're different. Even if you stop drawing for 4 hours, your mind and the way you're thinking is different than when you stopped. When you stopped, you had already been drawing for a certain amount of time. And now when you restart, you have come from doing something else, which kind of gives your brain a reset. It allows you to freely come up with new ideas, new shapes, new directions to go with the drawing. And sometimes there are sections of a drawing that I like the idea of it when I first start, but as I continue, I tend to dislike that piece of the drawing. And sometimes it's discouraging, especially if it's at the very beginning of a drawing. It almost makes me feel like just quitting, throwing it away, starting a new drawing. But overall, it's okay. Especially because if it is early on in the drawing, you can always fix whatever you don't like about it. You can minimize that piece of the drawing that you don't like. You can not necessarily cover it up. I mean, you could do that too. You can, depending on the size of the part or the piece or the direction you want to go, I mean, you can just color over. You can make it a dark spot in the drawing and cover over whatever spot that you don't like. which I do sometimes. I don't think I do that as often as trying to almost divert your attention away from that spot in the drawing. Instead of just covering it completely, I almost try to make every other piece of the drawing a lot better so that you focus on those pieces of the drawing. Someone who's looking at it is going to focus on the better parts, the more detailed parts, the more appealing to the eye. So if you have a piece of the drawing that's not, or that you feel is not necessarily appealing, if you surround that piece with good looking lines that are satisfying, you can draw the attention away from that spot that you feel is inadequate. In this drawing, I don't really remember what was going through my mind while making this drawing. I like to have other things going on while I'm drawing, whether it's listening to music or watching a TV show or watching a Twitch stream. I like to have other things going on so that it gives me a small break within my drawing. I can take a 5-second break and watch part of a live stream, and I think it prevents me from getting burnt out quickly within the scope of one drawing. People talk about getting burnt out in like a hobby, which usually has something to do with thinking about nothing but that hobby, or over the first couple weeks you are introduced to something, you don't do anything but that thing, and that can lead to burnout. And I think in this scale, being distracted in a sense by some form of other media helps prevent me from getting burnt out within a single drawing. Because if I'm not thinking about anything but this drawing, or maybe I'm thinking only about thoughts in my own head, maybe it's not the drawing, maybe I'm focused on something else that I'm thinking about, it makes it feel more exhausting. It makes me feel like I'm exerting more energy while drawing, maybe not into the drawing, because I try to put energy into my drawings. But if I'm too focused on something maybe troubling my mind or something like that, it feels like energy is being taken away from the drawing and taken away from me with no positive outcome. So for some people, maybe no sound is best. I know some people like to read with no sound, study with no sound, no music, just silence is what works best for them. And for me, that's just not the case, at least with drawing. I like to have other things going on, because if all I'm thinking about is the drawing, can kind of overthink a drawing, when in general I just want the drawing, I just want the lines to draw themselves, basically. I think a little bit about maybe the direction I want to go, but in general I just let the lines go down on the paper. In this part of the drawing, I started to go with a Sharpie, but I decided to change to an alcohol marker because Sharpie would have taken me so long to cover this area. And maybe you can see it on video, I'm not positive. But this is a black alcohol marker, which has a lot of reflection from the light, so it doesn't look very dark because of the light shining off of it. But you can kind of tell the difference in color from the ink that I used. The ink is not black, but it's just very, very dark. Maybe that's, maybe the difference in this marker's color and the ink is due to the fact that it's an alcohol marker and one is fountain pen ink. But I thought, while doing it, I was wondering if this is gonna make the artwork look bad or look like it was done, with very different materials or ideas. But I actually didn't mind the way this came out with the alcohol marker. I was kind of skeptical because I noticed how different the colors were. I guess I wasn't expecting the colors to be exact or even be close, but I wasn't sure how I was going to like it. But as I was filling in this deep spot with the black marker, I wasn't sure how I was going to like it, but I was waiting until I was done to kind of feel a certain way about it. And by the end, I like it. I like the way it turned out. I like the contrast and the difference between the bottom and the top of this drawing. The top feels very free, very light, while the bottom feels darker, maybe more sinister in tone. The bottom part of the drawing kind of reminds me of maybe a spine, or something of that nature. It kind of makes me think of bones or other kind of just a dark connotation, I guess. I don't know if connotation is the right word to describe a drawing, but that is the feel that I'm thinking of when I say connotation. I'm thinking of, if there's a word to describe the connotation of a drawing, that's the word that I'm thinking of, but I don't know what that word is. So we're getting to the end here. Sometimes I struggle with when to decide when a drawing is done, at least with the pen and ink portion. But I think in this one, I didn't really think about it that much. I just kind of knew I wanted to color in the whole bottom part. I don't remember if I was thinking of that while drawing most of the pen and ink lines. I don't know if I knew then that I was going to color that in, but once I knew I wanted to color it dark and have that bottom portion be dark, I just went for it. I didn't think about the other lines and if I wanted to add anything or anything like that. I just kind of just let it happen. So we're coming to the end of the video here. I just want to say thank you for watching, and if you have anything to say to me or anything to say at all, then I will check the comments and everything like that. But in general, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.